So I'm reviewing a practice pad, but why? Is there even any way to make a practice pad look cool? So it's a practice pad, and even now I'm still kind of asking myself, why am I making a video about a practice pad? But the answer really is because this is the only pad I have ever come across that has hype around it. You may have seen this before. We are talking about the new collaboration between Zildjian and Reflexx. Zildjian is now manufacturing and putting out the Reflexx conditioning pad, which you have probably seen on Instagram at some point in the past couple years. This has, at least from my perspective, been the most popular and the most difficult to get a hold of practice pad in the past few years. This is a product that's had a lot of buzz, and coming from a company that has this ridiculous roster of artists. And I'm not talking about Zildjian, I'm talking about the Reflexx artist page. Now Reflexx, recall, is a company that makes one product, which is this pad, and they've got on their roster Mark Juliana, Matt Cameron, Aaron Spears, Travis Barker, Carter McLean. The list goes on and on and on. And like I said before, if you are a drummer and have been on Instagram anytime in the past couple of years, you have probably come across this practice pad. So this is actually my first time trying one because I haven't been able to get one. And I just wanted to talk about whether it makes sense for you, if there's anything different about this than any other practice pad, and if it's worth the hype. Now, I just want to get out there right off the bat that even though it kind of sounds like I'm teasing, I'm really not taking shots at either Zildjian or Reflexx in any way. I am a huge supporter of the drum industry at large, and especially smaller companies within the drum industry. Really, the only fun I'm poking at is myself in making a review about practice pads. But in all honesty, I wanted to make this video and I wanted to check out this pad because it has had so much great buzz over the past few years that I just wanted to know what is different about it than other pads. So some of you may be in a similar situation where you haven't gotten a chance to actually try one of these, which hopefully will be less of an issue now that Zildjian is helping with manufacturing and distribution. They should be more readily available. The one I have here is the 6-inch version. There's a 6-inch and a 10-inch, I believe. And lo and behold, I couldn't even try the 10-inch version because that one is already on back order. So still a very, very popular product, even though Zildjian is now helping with the manufacturing. And let's just talk about the features. So the amazing features include being able to hit it on this side and also being able to flip it over and hit it on this side. Now, again, I'm just kidding, but this pad has two different surfaces, as many pads do, so you can get different levels of tension. So on the one side here, again, this is called a conditioning pad, so it's meant to be, I think, a little more realistic and have a little bit less rebound than most practice pads do. This side, I think, is, I don't really know which one's the standard. I think this is the, like, quote unquote standard side, and it feels very similar actually to a snare, like if you are just hitting a maybe medium tension snare drum, and then the other side has even less rebound. So this is more like hitting a rack tom or a floor tom. So that right off the bat is the big benefit, I think, if there is one, on this pad in particular, is that the surface is more realistic than other pads. And of course, there are other pads out there that claim to do the same thing. Some of them do this better than others. Of course, there's the infamous real feel pad, which feels anything but real. Still a fine practice pad. I've used a real feel for years, but they do not actually feel like playing drums. This, whatever the surface actually is, there's kind of this like spongy surface on one side and then this slightly denser spongy surface on the other side. These, whatever they are, these do feel a little more realistic, like you are actually hitting a drum head. Now I know what you're saying. You're saying, Cole, we are here for the sound demo. Yes, I get it. So let's hear, what does this practice pad sound like, and what does it sound like in comparison to other popular pads on the market? So we've got what I think is the main side, the side that kind of feels more like a snare, and it sounds like And then the other side, the side with less rebound, whew, gotta muscle it out. Kind of like this one. And then compared to something similar, this is a Vic Firth pad, but it's basically a real feel. So this is something that you've probably used before, something like this. Sounds like so. A little bit louder, perhaps. And then the Reflexx. Now, if you want me to make a sample pack, just let me know in the comments below, and I'd be happy to provide you with a carefully manicured Reflexx practice pad sample pack. So again, all teasing aside, there are a couple of reasons that you might want a pad like this versus any other practice pad on the market. I do think that it feels more realistic on both sides than most other practice pads. That said, bear in mind that you are going to have to work a little bit harder on this pad than most, which again is maybe a benefit to some of you and maybe not to others. I think it's also on average probably a little bit quieter than most practice pads out there, and that alone may be worth the price of admission. And speaking of pricing, that is something you may want to consider if you are interested in these. I think the 10-inch version is 80 bucks and this 6-inch version is 50 bucks. So a little bit on the pricey side, and you are going to have to decide whether it is worth it or not for you. This is something that obviously is never going to wear down. You could use this for the rest of your life. So again, that's a value proposition that you will have to evaluate for yourself. So personally, I think I will probably end up buying one of the 10-inch pads. The 6-inch I wouldn't recommend, or at least I don't want to use myself, because if you hit it too hard, if you kind of dig in, it will start to jump around, and that effect gets compounded if you're playing with both sticks, right? So it can start to jump around. So personally, I would go with the 10-inch version if you're going to get one at all. For me, I think just the slightly reduced volume and the fact that it feels more realistic is worth it in my situation, but you will have to decide for yourself. There will, of course, now be the separation between those of us that have the Zildjian Reflexx version and the OGs that have just the standard Reflexx version. I'm not sure if Reflexx is going to also be selling their own branded version or if it's going to be all the Zildjian Reflexx version, but you know, maybe check Reverb, see what you can find. At the end of the day, it is still just a practice pad, and I am not saying that the hype is unwarranted in any way, but there's nothing special about this practice pad that is going to make you better than any other per se. And I'll steal a quote from Mike Johnston, who would say that the best practice pad is the one that you use, which I completely agree with. I've used an Aquarian, I think True Bounce practice pad for years and years and years, and I don't have any delusions that this is going to make me any better of a drummer than using that pad. And I think if you already have a practice pad that you know and love, maybe it's one of those old like tilted wooden ones from way back when, maybe it's a real feel, maybe it's a Moongel pad, whatever pad you use and whatever pad you like, that's the one that works for you. This one is not necessarily going to be any better. So my recommendation would be to stop by a store and see if you can try one in person. And yeah, if you dig it, get one. And if you don't, just be happy with whatever practice pad you have. So hopefully this was of some use to somebody. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.